This phase on, and I am so excited to spend this week as one of your MCs for the Teach-In and to embrace new perspectives. Thank you. And to embrace new perspectives within our nation values. I am a second-generation biracial student, originally from Connecticut, but I call New Jersey home. I attend Loyola University in Maryland as a junior and major in political science and journalism, specifically with an interest in reporting and providing worldly updates. I have served as class president for the past 3 years and have had the pleasure to be introduced to opportunities such as the Teach-In. It is wonderful to be back for a second year, and to share this experience with you all is a privilege.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Ethan Strauss. I am honored to join Alexis as an MC this weekend, and I'm grateful as well to join all of you in community. I'm a graduate student at the Boston College School of Theology and Ministry, a place where I am honored and able to learn about the intersections of justice and theology toward meaningful ministry in the world. I'm also an alum of Regis University in Colorado. Woo! And a few years ago, this Teach-In offered a space where I could become rooted in a faith for justice. I'm overjoyed to be renewed in that experience with all of you this weekend.
We come together this weekend in a space to root and renew ourselves in a faith that does justice, and to celebrate 25 years of gathering at the Ignatian Family Teach-In for justice. Each year, we root ourselves in Ignatian values of perseverance while renewing new aspects of the need to support our growing marginalized communities that struggle religiously, socially, educationally, and mentally.
We're here because we are called to renew our community and our work for justice, to care for and learn from one another, to challenge ourselves in this community toward justice, and to renew our commitment to creating a more merciful world. A world where our marginalized community members are affirmed as integral members of our communities.
We recognize and reaffirm that our community is rooted in action, and so, in the spirit of Ignatian imagination, we discern again and renew a common pilgrimage towards a more just society, a more just church, a more just world where all creation better reveals the divine mystery through our care for one another, as well as our common work of dismantling the systems that disrupt the flourishing of all creation.
Drawing together this weekend our past, our present community gathered today, and the future to which we are called to participate in, we celebrate and proclaim a community of love working for justice. Welcome, all. May you be loved and cherished here. May you be rooted and renewed. It is our joy to say for the 25th year, welcome to the Ignatian Family Teach-In.
We would now like to invite Francisco for some more music.
All right, most of you learned it, so ready? Caminando, caminando. Nice, vamos. Vamos caminando hacia el sol. Caminando, caminando a la libertad. Vamos caminando hacia la libertad. Oh, we've been walking for 25 years to taking on the baton of many who've come before us. Many who've come before us and more who will come after us. So let's take that with courage, with energy, with desire, with peace. Caminando, caminando, vamos caminando hacia el sol. Caminando, caminando, vamos caminando hacia la libertad. Oh.
Thank you, Francisco. It is IFT tradition throughout the weekend to do roll call so everyone can get a sense of who is present in this space. I know. All right, folks. When your school or parish's name is called, respond presente. The Spanish phrase simply means present here and comes from the teach-in's roots in Columbus, Georgia. We'll do a roll call in each of our Mainstage general sessions, so if you don't hear yours called at this time, don't worry, it's coming. And when you hear your school, get hype and make lots of noise. Okay, here we go.
Catholic Theological Union. It's pretty quiet.
Cristo Rey Brooklyn High School.
Church of the Holy Family.
Cristo Rey, sorry, that's listed twice. Gwynedd Mercy University.
Yeah. Junipero Sierra High School. There's some.
Boston College.
Cristo Rey Atlanta Jesuit High School.
Dominican Academy.
Boston College High School. Hey!
Fairfield College Preparatory School.
St. Peter's University.
Canisius High School.
Bishop O'Dowd High School.
Spring Hill College.
University of Scranton.
Xavier College Preparatory High School.
UNCW Catholic Student Center.
Cristo Rey de la Salle.
Chevreuse High School.
Bellarmine College Preparatory.
Cabrini University.
Cristo Rey St. Martin College Prep.
Rosemont College.
Convent of the Sacred Heart.
Cristo Rey Philadelphia High School.
Newton Country Day School of the Sacred Heart.
College of the Holy Cross.
Cristo Rey New York High School.
University of San Francisco.
Creighton University.
Xavier University.
Archbishop Mitty High School.
The Boston College School of Theology and Ministry.
Creighton Preparatory High School, sorry.
College of St. Benedict and St. John's University.
Brophy College Preparatory.
Cristo Rey Jesuit High School.
Chestnut Hill College.
DeSmet Jesuit High School. We're so excited to have all of you here.
Tomorrow. I promise.
We'll get there. We'll get there. We are so excited to have all of you here, whether we called you or not. But we have, in true IFTJ fashion, a couple of announcements.
If you pull out your programs, there is a map of the hotel located on page 2. Use this, but also do not hesitate to ask ISN staff, volunteers, and the folks at the registration desk for help if you need it.
Speaking of Social Justice Expo, that's also happening right here this weekend in the hotel and in person. This year we have over 60 organizations exhibiting just up the stairs outside of the conference hall. Make sure to save time to visit them, to support them, and to learn about their incredible work and find ways to get involved and deepen your justice work. You can find them one floor up in the International Terrace and in Columbia.
Also upstairs in Columbia, you'll find some incredible creative stuff happening. The House of Haggard Catholic Worker in Wheeling, West Virginia invites you to join their interactive art exhibit, Rooted Growth. Explore the intersection of the Teach-In's history and what promotes growth in our lives as justice-minded cultural workers. Create a reminder of the sacred space you have entered into at IFTJ and contribute to the collaborative work that will be shared with the community at Mass on Sunday. Nearby, you'll also find the social justice photo booth where you can help us tell the IFTJ story and share the Teach-In experience on social media.
A note for photographers and videographers, we have a lot of joy that you're here with us. We love that so many of you want to capture photos and videos from the Teach-In this year. We would just like to ask that if you're not an official event photographer or videographer, please don't approach the stage or block the aisles. Feel free to take photos and videos from your seat, but be respectful of other attendees as well. IFTJ photos and video will be available on Flickr and to YouTube next week.
Now for some COVID reminders. This weekend, we are privileged to gather in this space together, and we must care for one another. So while masks are optional, we encourage you to wear a mask while in the hotel, wash and sanitize your hands thoroughly and often. If at any point this weekend you feel unwell, stay in your room and join the free live stream. Let's care for one another this weekend. Also, you may have seen some IFTJ, #IFTJ trending on social media or have met some of our social media team already. If not, we hope you will take the time to engage with us online this weekend and to share some of the things you are seeing and hearing with people who are not here with us today using #IFTJ. Will members of the social media team please stand up? Thank you. This group of staff and alumni from Ignatian Family Schools, Jesuits in Formation, writers and editors of the Jesuit Post, and the Ignatian Solidarity Network staff members will be guiding some of the conversations on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
We mentioned it just a moment ago, but did you know that all of this weekend's Mainstage events are being live streamed for free? Be sure to let folks back home know that they can join you virtually at ignatiansolidarity.net/IFTJ at the live stream tab.
Many thanks to Francisco Herrera, who's providing some of the music for this weekend. Our musician in residence is a cultural worker, a theologian, and a singer and songwriter. Throughout the history of the Teach-In, Francisco has helped us unite in song, and we are excited to have his music with us again this weekend. This weekend, we are also thrilled to welcome the Peace Poets as guest musicians. The Peace Poets use poetry, movement, and music to address injustice across the political spectrum.
And finally, please join us in welcoming Chris Kerr, Executive Director of the Ignatian Solidarity Network, to the stage.
All right. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Ignatian Solidarity Network, I'd like to welcome each of you to the Ignatian Family Teach-In for Justice. For 25 years, this Ignatian family has gathered to deepen our network's commitment to being people of justice who are motivated to act by our faith. By participating in this year's Teach-In, you are joining tens of thousands of people representing hundreds of Catholic parishes, universities, high schools, and other organizations from nearly every U.S. state and countries worldwide who gather here in this room for this 25th anniversary. Before I tell you about the weekend and why we're here, I want to give you a sense of who's in the room. So first, let's figure out who has been to the most teach-ins. I want everybody to stand up. Everybody stand up. This is like a Greek wedding sort of tradition here, okay? So I want you to do me a favor. If you are here for the first time, raise your hand. Raise your hand. Okay. Oh, wow, a lot of you. All right, welcome. Let's give them a round of applause. Okay. If you're here for the second time, this is your second teach-in, raise your hand. Ooh, welcome back. Welcome back. We're glad you're here. Take a seat. Take a seat. There you go. Okay, let's ramp this up a little bit. If you've attended at least 5 teach-ins, but less, 5 or less, raise your hand. 5 or less. Okay, take a seat. Take a seat. There's still some folks standing out there. How about if you've been to 10 teach-ins or less? 10 teach-ins or less. Okay? Take a seat. Take a seat. Okay, I want you to look around now. Look around. See who's still up. See who's still standing. Okay? Yeah. How about 15 or less? 15 or less. Raise your hand. All right. Take a seat. Take a seat. I see you, Mark Potter. I see you out there. Yeah. And then let's see. How about 20 or less? Anyone who's 20 or less, raise your hand. Okay. All right. Take a seat. All right. Look around. Is anyone still standing? Who is that? Oh, it's Loretta. Okay. All right. Good. Excellent. Excellent. I see a few more. Okay. Excellent. All right. Well, and I think there's one person actually that has attended all 25, but he's not here yet. Is there anyone else who's attended all 25? I can't even claim that. I'm only at 24. Okay. Well, Father Don McMillan will be here tomorrow, and we will welcome him. Okay. All right. All right. Now let's get a sense of the networks of people that are represented in this crowd. All right. The institutions from across the country and beyond. All right, first I want to welcome some folks from El Salvador. I want to welcome our partners from Christians for Peace in El Salvador, CRISPAS. They have a number of their staff here. Give them a round of applause. Where are they? CRISPAS, where are you? Oh, there they are. Oh, there they are. Hola. So I want to thank them because they've really helped us in this 25th year to ensure that we really honored the legacy of this work and its connections to El Salvador, which I'll tell you a little bit more about. I want to say thank you to Francisco and Andy and Rafael and Stan for being here with us this weekend and for helping to illuminate the legacy of the martyrs of El Salvador. It deserves special attention because the teaching is grounded in the story of the 6 Jesuits and Selena and Elba Ramos, who are pictured here at the front of the stage, who were innocently murdered in El Salvador 33 years ago this fall at the Jesuit University, the UCA. And so we're really grateful to have our friends from CRISPAS here. In addition, we're excited to welcome the many delegations from Jesuit parishes, social ministries, high schools, and universities here from across the United States. This includes member colleges and universities of the Association of Jesuit Colleges and Universities. Let's hear it for our Jesuit universities. Excellent. We have parishes affiliated with each of the 4 U.S. Jesuit provinces from across the United States. Let's hear it for our parishes. Great. And we have member schools of both the Jesuit Schools Network and the Cristo Rey Network who are here. Yeah, we do. Yep. We also have members, both current and former volunteers of both the Jesuit Volunteer Corps and Jesuit Volunteer Corps Northwest. It's here for our JVs. Now, we also have many delegations from institutions sponsored by other Catholic partners, okay, including women's and men's religious orders like the Sisters of Mercy, the Sacred Heart Sisters, the Sisters of St. Joseph, the Notre Dame Sisters and Notre Dame School Sisters, the Sisters of Humility of Mary. Oh, there they are, good. A number of Franciscan orders, as well as schools and parishes from a number of Catholic dioceses across the country as well. All right, so we're so grateful that you are here, that you're part of this Ignatian family, that you've come with an open heart to explore faith and justice through the lens of Catholic social teaching and the spirituality of St. Ignatius of Loyola. And welcome to the many people from around the world that have joined us via live stream. Thank you for being with us. And I also want to say I have a bunch of people I want to say thanks to, including our ISN staff and Teach-In Steering Committee. There's a group of about 30 people who start working on the Teach-In almost a year in advance. Hundreds of hours go into planning all of this, so we're really grateful to them. Speaking of gratitude, on the back of your program book, everybody look on the back of your program book and see all those beautiful logos. Those are institutions that value our faith and justice mission and have committed to partnering with us to put the Teach-In together. We have our Xavier sponsors, America Magazine, Catholic Women Preach, Jesuit Refugee Service USA, the Jesuit School of Theology in Berkeley, Jesuit Volunteer Corps Northwest, Georgetown University's Kalmanovitz Initiative, Magis Americas, National Catholic Reporter, St. Joseph Worker Program, Villanova University Campus Ministry, Xavier High School in New York City, and Xavier University. All right, we have our Loyola sponsors, the Catholic Theological Union, Ethics Merch, and University of San Francisco. And we have our Magis level sponsors, the Boston College School of Theology and Ministry, and the Loyola Foundation. I'd also like to offer special thanks to the many individuals who sponsored the Teach-In, who are listed on page 3 in that little blue box. Make sure to check out all those generous folks. We wouldn't be able to put on the Teach-In without all that generosity, so we're really grateful to all of those sponsors. Now for a little bit about how we got here tonight. When we first gathered 25 years ago, we did so in a tent on the banks of the Chattahoochee River in Columbus, Georgia. And I just want to say thanks to my friends at the AV table who are doing a great job flipping through these slides. Thank you. There's the tent. I was actually a sophomore in college that fall at John Carroll University. Go Blue Streaks. And I remember the 14-hour bus ride being really long, but how energized I was when we pulled up to the field where the tent was set up. The music, Francisco was playing the music, the roll call, just like you did here, and the powerful speakers that helped us understand how a U.S. Army base, seemingly in the middle of nowhere, could be connected to the deaths of a bishop, sisters, priests, and lay leaders in places like El Salvador. You see, our location and our intention in gathering at that time were to build on a growing movement of people seeking to call attention to the U.S. role in the torturing and killing of hundreds of thousands of innocent people throughout Central and South America, including the murders of the El Salvador Uca martyrs, the 6 Jesuits and 2 lay women who I mentioned earlier, Saint Oscar Romero, Blessed Father Retiro Grande, Sisters Dorothy Kazel, Ida Ford, Maura Clark, and laywoman Jean Donovan, and thousands of others who died innocently in places like El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Colombia, to name a few. It was graduates of a U.S. military training school for Latin American soldiers, then known as the School of the Americas, and based at Fort Benning, that provided training to soldiers who would return to their countries and often become some of the most grievous violators of human rights during that time. It's kind of ironic, actually, that the Teach-In has come to be here at the Washington Hilton. We're just 1 mile from the White House, where numerous U.S. presidents of both political parties sustained our government's policies toward El Salvador that ensured that over 1 million taxpayer dollars a day of military funding was provided to their government, El Salvador's government, throughout their 10-plus year civil war, leaving our country and its citizens culpable in Central America's atrocities at that time. When the founder of the Teach-In, Bob Holstein, a former Jesuit turned lay lawyer, as well as a husband and a father, learned of the deaths of the martyrs, he was deeply moved and inspired to act. After visiting the gates for a number of vigils each November, he did act, participating in nonviolent civil disobedience that landed him in prison for 3 months and motivated him to create a way for the Ignatian family to come together at the gates of Fort Benning and call attention to our country's role in the disturbing and violent reality in Central America. And look where the tent is today. It's no longer a real tent, right? We're not stuck in the mud of Western Georgia. Instead, this is a tent of ideas, of thoughts, stories, dreams, hopes, and prayers that we are each part of. Upwards of 2,000 people gathered in this room tonight to learn, network, pray, and act for justice. And we are gathered right here in Washington, D.C., in the heart of this nation's capital, a place where our voices of faith and solidarity can ring out, calling for humane migration policies and a serious commitment to respond to the urgent and dire climate change reality that faces all people, but especially those who are most vulnerable. And this right here, this is just the beginning, because now you are part of this Ignatian family for life, joining with tens of thousands of other people who stand for justice together through the Ignatian Solidarity Network's in-person programs, online campaigns, and much more. Thank you so much for being part of this Ignatian family and working diligently to be with us here this weekend. Now, let us prepare for our opening prayer. We're going to welcome Justin White and Tina Marie Stoles to the stage to kick us off.
Hello, Ignatian family. My name is Justin White.
And my name is Tina Marie Stoltz.
And this year, we will be serving as leaders of prayer here at the Teach-In. And we are excited to begin this journey with you today. Anytime you see us on the stage, know that we will be entering into a reflective and prayerful space. The theme for the 25th anniversary of the Ignatian Family Teach-In for Justice is rooted in renewing. We will begin our time together over the next 2 days with an opening prayer that focuses on the first part of that theme, being rooted, particularly being rooted in faith and truth through the spiritual practice of truth-telling.
We gather in our nation's capital, a symbol of freedom for many of us, but also a symbol of oppression. This place is a symbol, even an epicenter, of oppression for the indigenous peoples who were removed from this land, and all of the lands that we in this room call home, in the name of the expansion of European Christianity and opportunities for European Christians. This capital city is also a symbol of oppression for enslaved Africans, whose unpaid labor built some of its most iconic infrastructure and whose rights to freedom were regularly overlooked in legislative processes, all in the name of upholding the supremacy of whiteness and of white people. As Catholic Christians, it's important that we root ourselves in the truth about our faith tradition's complicity in the genocide of indigenous peoples around the world, and the enslavement of people, specifically of African descent, and also people in the US, particularly at the hands of our ancestors in the Ignatian tradition.
In telling these truths about our history, we can root ourselves more deeply in the calls that we will hear in the coming days. Calls to renew our commitment to healing, a call to work together to address the injustices that continue in our world. Now we invite you to join our fellow Ignatian family members from the Red Cloud Indian School on the Pine Ridge Reservation in a traditional Lakota prayer.
Wow, there's a lot of people. Ampete washte yuhape. Josie imachiapi. We wish you a good evening, my relatives. My name is Josie, and we greet you with love from Machpia Luta, a Lakota Catholic Jesuit high school located within Lakota Nation in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. We are excited to be here before you at the Ignatian Family Teach-In for Justice and to be in community with so many schools and organizations engaged in the spiritual work of justice, peace, and reconciliation. As we open this conference prayer, we are lovingly greet and continue to bless this day and all delegations within this room by first rooting our hearts, minds, spirits before the presence of the Creator.
Before I continue speaking, I would like to ask on our behalf of our elders here today, even if you're a year older than me, if you could forgive me and all of us for speaking in front of you guys. Now, with that tradition out of the way, I'll explain another. In preparation for prayer, Azilia is a very important part of our Lakota culture that connects us with our Creator God. In the Azilia, we have 4 sacred medicines: sage, sweetgrass, cedar, and tobacco. We would like to bless this space with sage, as we most often use this medicine to gather and lift our prayers to Wanka Tanga. Creator God, in our prayer gatherings at the start of our classes and community spaces, may the blessing of the smoke that comes from this sage take root in our breath, where sacred words will come out of our eyes to see all the good things God has given unto us, our ears to hear all the good words and learn from the experiences of others around the circle of life, our feet so that we may walk gently and respectfully with Unchimaka, Mother Earth. I would like to ask all of you to stand in silence as we light sage as prayer.
When we do this prayer, we ask that you face one of the 4 directions as each person speaks. We will point in that direction, and we just ask for your participation. Let us now pray the prayer of the 4 directions. Great Spirit, we look to the east. Come to us with the power of the east. We are thankful for the light of the rising sun. Let there be light on the path we walk. Let us remember to always be thankful that you give the gift of a new day.
Spirit of creation, we turn to the south. We are thankful for sending us warmth and smoothing winds from the south to comfort us and care us when we are tired and cold. Unfold us as your gentle breeze unfold the leaves on the trees, and as you give to all the earth your warmth moving the wind, give to us warmth and remember to be grateful so that we may grow close to you.
Great life-giving Spirit, we face the west, the direction of sundown. Let us remember every day that the moment will come when our sun will go down. Never let us forget we must fade into you. Give us beautiful color, give us a great sky for setting, so that when it is time to meet you, we come with glory.
Great Spirit of love, come to us with the power of the north. Make us courageous when the cold winds of life fall upon us. Give us strength and endurance for everything that is harsh, everything that hurts, everything that makes us squint. Let us move through life ready to take what comes from the north.
Great Spirit of the sky, lift us up to you that our hearts may worship you and come to you in glory. Hold in our memory that you are the Creator, greater than we, eager for our good life. Let everything that is in the world lift our minds and our hearts and our lives to you, so that we may come to you always in truth and in heart.
And now I invite you all to just turn around. Giver of life, we pray to you from Unchimaka, the earth. Help us to remember as we touch the earth that we are little and of need of your pity. Help us to be thankful for the gift of the earth and never to walk hurtfully on it. Bless us with eyes to love what comes from Mother Earth, and teach us how to use well your gifts. Mitakiwe Oyasin, we are all related. Aho.
Please be seated. Each delegation was asked to bring one stone or pebble with them. In a moment, we ask that one member from each delegation come forward and bring your stone and place it in the rose bush. Rocks in the soil of these plants will help ensure that their roots have the ability to grow deep and strong. They will prevent erosion, giving the plants the best chance for a long, abundant life. These rocks represent all our communities, from the shores of Lake Erie to the banks of the Mississippi and the Rocky Mountains. As we gather together, it is our combined strength and presence that ensure that the roots will grow strong and continue to flourish as we embark on our shared journey. Now, as each delegation sends one member forward with their pebble, please join us in singing the song Humbly, led by the Boston College Liturgical Arts Group. The lyrics will be present on the screen.
is a personal honor to introduce our next speaker, who will break open the theme for this 25th anniversary of the Ignatian Family Teach-In. Dr. Beth Ford McNamee. Yes, yes. Beth is the Assistant Director of Campus Ministry at St. Joseph's University and so much more. She always introduces me as her colleague, and I'm really offended by that because I consider her one of my best friends. But don't be too hard on her because I really wanted to introduce her because there's a few things I think you need to know about her before you hear her speak. First is that she is the kind of person who brings her son to protests for racial justice, and she carries him on her back. She has taught me and so many students about Ignatian spirituality and how faith and justice are one. And she just finished her dissertation on lay leadership for social justice in Jesuit higher education. So welcome, Dr. Beth.
Hi, everyone. So my name again, Dr. Beth Ford McNamee. I'm a campus minister from St. Joe's University in Philadelphia. Woo! I'm also an alum of St. Joe's, and I'm a former Jesuit volunteer where I served in Tanzania, East Africa. I'm grateful for this opportunity to continue to break open our theme, our Ignatian Family Teach-In theme, Rooted and Renewing. Let's talk about our IFTJ roots in this 25th anniversary year. I actually could have gone to one of the very first teach-ins, but I didn't. When I was a student at St. Joe's, a friend was hopping in his car from Philadelphia and headed down to Fort Benning, Georgia. He invited me to go, and I said no. Maybe I thought I was too busy. I can't remember. It wasn't until years later when I happened to hear the founder of the School of the Americas watch, Father Roy Bourgeois. I'm going to see if I can do slides. I don't know if I can do this or not. If not, it's okay. Okay. Father Roy Bourgeois speak at a conference that I woke up. I heard Father Roy's raw grief as he described his friends, religious sisters, priests, lay leaders, and thousands of innocent civilians who had been murdered in El Salvador. I heard Father Roy's passion for justice as he described discovering that many of his friends had been killed by people who had been trained in the United States at the School of the Americas in Fort Benning, Georgia. Among those martyred were the 6 Jesuit priests and their 2 lay companions at the UCA in El Salvador. Father Roy described fasting and praying at the gates of the SOA. He described committing nonviolent civil disobedience by carrying a loudspeaker onto the base, blasting a recording of the last sermon of St. Oscar Romero, the day before Romero was murdered, as he begged the soldiers of his country, "In the name of God, in the name of our tormented people, I beg you, I implore you, in the name of God, I order you to stop the repression." And so from that point on, I was in. I had what my spiritual director calls a surge of the heart. I had to go. I had to bring my body to the very place where bodies were being trained to kill the bodies of their own people with my tax dollars. I deeply desired to be in solidarity with others working for justice. I wanted to join my voice with those whose voices had been violently silenced. I said yes to this surge of the heart. I hopped in a church van with people I had just met, and I went. I remember attending Mass at the Ignatian Family Teach-In and praying with thousands of other people all together in the tent. It was cold that year. We were huddled under blankets. And I remember thinking, wow, this is what the church can be, a church that I want to work for justice with. Then, once I was back at St. Joe's working in campus ministry, I would bring buses of students each year to the Ignatian Family Teach-In in Fort Benning, Georgia. We'd arrive bleary-eyed, subsisting on peanut butter and marshmallow fluff sandwiches. We'd join thousands of other students, peace activists, and religious communities in front of the gates, singing each of the names of thousands who had lost their lives to the graduates of the School of the Americas. After each name, we'd hold up our white crosses and sing Presente, to make present their witness and our collective cries for justice. Then, in 2010, the Ignatian family moved their tent and the teach-in to Washington, D.C. We were still rooted in the dangerous memory of the martyrs, and we were now inspired to bring our voices to speak truth to political power in our nation's capital, which is what we are doing here this weekend. With this continued journey of the Ignatian family, I kept asking myself, for what and for whom am I willing to give my life? So take a moment now, write it down or call this to mind. You did say yes to join the Ignatian family this weekend. Why did you say yes? Who or what roots you? Let's talk now about renewing. And to do this, I'm going to add another word to our mix, radical, because the origins of the word root come from the Latin radix, or radical. So to be radical is to be rooted. Let's talk about rooted and radical renewing. Because when we are rooted in the truth of our histories, when we radically reckon with them, then we can reach and branch, bear fruit and renew. The invitations to that radical reckoning are many, and you will hear about them this weekend. The deaths of those murdered and martyred cry out for justice, and they invite us to prophetic, radical, renewing imagination of what if? What if our society, our Jesuit institutions, our delegations here were to fully engage in a reckoning magnified by the twin pandemics of racism and COVID-19? What if we truly engaged in intersectional reckoning for racial justice, for Indigenous communities, for migrants, for those experiencing poverty, for all marginalized communities, and for our earth? What if we saw with the eyes of our hearts the truth that we all belong to one another, that we are one family, one body, and then when one part of the body is suffering, we all suffer? What if we all collectively acted out of love on the yes of that reality? So you, yes, all of you, each of you have beautiful gifts and stories and perspectives. And so many of you said this is your first teach-in. And now you are all part of this Ignatian family. You each have a unique call to respond. And so take a moment now. Write or call to mind one word that describes a unique gift that you want to bring to this shared work of justice, kinship, and solidarity. What gift do you want to grow or be renewed this weekend? My deep desire for you is that you say yes. Yes, to be truly present this weekend and beyond. Yes, to learn and grow our Ignatian family roots and branches. Yes, to engage in reckoning and renewing. And pay attention to the surges of your own heart this weekend. Out of love, to what and to whom are you willing to devote your life? The good news is that we do not ask these questions alone, and we do not walk this path alone. Sacredness abounds in this space. We are called together to be rooted, to radically renew. We are lovingly accompanied on this sacred journey by our God, by the witness of the martyrs, by the witness of one another, by our Ignatian family. And to this, let's say yes. And we're going to conclude our Breaking Open the Theme with a reading. Thank you.
Rooted in truth, we have all we need to do the work of renewing the earth. From the prophet Jeremiah. Blessed are those who trust in the Lord and have made the Lord their hope and confidence. They are like trees planted along a riverbank with roots that reach deep into the water. Such trees are not bothered by the heat or worried by long months of drought. Their leaves stay green, and they never stop producing fruit. The Jesuit martyrs were rooted in the truth. Their roots reach deep into the people of El Salvador, the poor, the oppressed, the campesinos in the fields. They are the ones they loved and worked for, and ultimately gave their lives for. We are called on our campuses, in our cities, and in this nation to become rooted in truth, to bear witness with our lives as they did. In essence, to live a faith that does justice each and every day. Rooted in truth, we have all we need to do the work of renewing the earth.
Thank you, Clarissa, Beth, Tina Marie, and Justin, and to the IFTJ Prayer and Liturgy Committee for beginning our weekend with prayer.
We would now like to welcome our first Ignatian Network speakers, Andre Ignofo and Raven Shaw, students at St. Ignatius College Preparatory in San Francisco.
Hello, my name is Andre Ignofo.
And my name is Raven Shaw.
We are gathered here today to talk about what it means to be rooted
and renewed
in our identities
in justice
and in the importance of upholding our human dignity within safe spaces in our institutions. Who are you? I am biracial, half black and half white.
I hear you, but really, Andre, who are you?
Well, growing up, being rooted in my identity was challenging. My whole life, I have lived in a white community with my white family because my black dad and I are estranged. Even within my family, I faced obstacles with the invalidation of my identity and feeling heard. I have always been the minority, constantly questioned, judged, and tested by people, especially those who I thought had my back. I'll never forget the time at my cousin's end-of-year water polo party where he and his friends debated my peculiar genetic DNA, as if I was an alien instead of his family. There was another time when my teammate told my best friend that he said the N-word, and yet my best friend completely neglected the issue. When I gained the courage to talk with my swim coach on what happened, nothing was done as I anticipated. So Raven, how am I supposed to be rooted in who I am? Because you see, when you are alone with constantly no one in your corner, being able to stand up and say no is one of the most challenging things that can be done. You know, come to think of it, no one has had my back. Not my cousin, not my supposed best friend, and definitely not my coach. Now, just because we're both black doesn't necessarily mean our experiences are the same. So Raven, who are you?
I'm just a black girl trying to navigate a world that was not created for me.
What do you mean by that?
Well, like you said, my experience was different from yours. I grew up around a community that was and is unapologetically black. I've known since the moment I came out of the womb, this is me. And yet,
Reimagine.
I've had my challenges along the way, like you, as the schools I attended and cities I lived in have always been places where I was a minority. It's that time. I remember in the 6th grade, I wanted to stop wearing braids because someone said they looked like burnt curly fries. I laughed it off. It's in 7th grade where at recess, I overhear a kid begin to say the N-word, and I look at him thinking, I'm about to call him out, but he sees me. And before I could say anything, looks and says, it was just a joke. And I laughed it off again, because don't you see? It was always just a joke, right, Andre? Right, y'all? I mean, that's what I told myself, because what would the teachers do? It's a joke. What would the administration do? It's a joke. This is how the world works, I told myself. I just had to deal with it. But guess what? They were never jokes, but I couldn't understand that. I wouldn't understand that. So I wondered, how could I get to a place of not dealing with it, but facing it?
We mentioned the hard parts of our backgrounds because, to be truthful, they are a part of who we are, our identities. Who are we? While we are rooted in this pain, as Father Brian Massengale mentions, the soul of black people and our oppression, we cannot deny and will never forget the constant joys we experience because of our race and our culture. We are both in leadership this year in the Black Student Union, an affinity space for black and brown students at our school, St. Ignatius College Prep, a Jesuit high school in San Francisco. I am co-secretary.
And I'm co-president.
The BSU has been a shared space where we've both felt seen and heard. Unfortunately, last year, the BSU experienced an anti-black sentiment from some students at our school. I felt as though my existence didn't matter, and it was hard for me to process the hatred we were experiencing, because for me, unfortunately, it was nothing new. During that time, we felt alone and isolated. But out of that hurt came unity within the BSU and a stronger community that everyone within could lean upon.
We talked about who we are as individuals and as African Americans, but who are we as Ignatian leaders and Jesuit-educated persons?
We are called within our faith to support those who are oppressed so that they will no longer be on the margins. I believe it is within all of our backgrounds and experiences that we seek to commit to justice.
But what happens when we don't have the space or the people in power around us to voice the issues happening? I'm sure we've all had that internal voice that discourages us and tells us no one will listen.
Well, let me put it this way. Committing to justice involves standing up to the majority, challenging a person or system of power, even if this can result in social alienation or judgment. However, this is a risk worth taking. In order for us to be rooted and renewed in who we are, we cannot falter in the face of injustice.
You're right. As a society, we cannot hope to bring about change or progress without the help of everyone. Lila Watson, a Murray, Indigenous Australian visual artist, put it best. She said, "If you have come to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is bound with mine, then let us work together." What does this quote look like within our institutions? Maybe it's creating a unity council that invites students of various backgrounds to have a conversation on their experiences at your school. Or it's having a town hall meeting to call out your school if it's not committing to the value of belonging. Imagine what would it look like for your schools to have specific safe spaces like affinity groups for minority students. Lila is simply saying that we all cannot be free if one of us is bound by injustice. No. It is when we are united as one that true freedom occurs. We must work together, no matter our positionality, because our freedom is intertwined with each other. If we ever hope to one day live in a world where we are rooted in our individual identities, we all must be rooted in our collective identity as human beings. Like Father Boyle said at last year's IITJ, there is no us and them. There is only we. And let me tell you, we cannot do this alone. The BSU showed Andre and I that. We together in this room can show each other that.
So ask yourself, what are we doing in this space together as a whole here at the Ignatian Family Teach-In for Justice? Carrying all of our identities to this space, when we go back to our various institutions, what will we do to make our voices heard, to uplift the voices that don't get heard?
Now, let us be clear. We ask you all these questions not for you to look at our school as a model, because we're far from perfect. Rather, see our stories as a journey to being rooted in who we are and to being renewed through acts that prompt us to commit to action within our institutions. So, let's verbalize and say these questions together to acknowledge and uplift all the voices in this space. Say, who am I?
Who am I? Who are we?
Who are we? Who do we want to be?
Who do we want to be?
We must ask ourselves these questions because it is the answer to them that we must hold deep in our hearts with compassion.
So when we ask, who are you? Best believe we hear you.
Best believe we see you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andre and Raven, for that amazing speech. Let's give another round of applause. Now, let's hear a word from the sponsor of our upcoming keynote, the School of Environmental Sustainability at Loyola University Chicago.
Reimagine, respond, restore. At the School of Environmental Sustainability, we are called to create solutions. Our mission caters to the needs of our planet, using teaching and research to benefit humanity. Together, we will build the world for the common good of generations to come. Rise up and take action. Your calling starts today. Reimagine.
Murders to mobilize the network of Jesuit institutions to call attention to the role of the U.S. funding in military training that led to the martyrs' killings. This gathering of Jesuit school delegations will become known as the Ignatian Family Teach-In for Justice.
Father Curry played an integral role in developing the Ignatian Solidarity Network as an organization to connect Jesuit institutions throughout the U.S., to collaborate and work for justice year-round. He became one of ISN's founding board members and advocated to ensure that the value of ISN was understood throughout the Jesuit network and larger church. We could not be in this room tonight if it were not for Father Curry. Father Curry remained deeply committed to the work of ISN and the Teach-In until the last months of his life, acting as someone ISN could call for support, ideas, or sound advice. To honor Father Curry's legacy, we have designated our first keynote of the Teach-In as the Father Charlie Curry Memorial Keynote. And now to our speaker, Bill McKibben.
Well, it is a great pleasure to be with you in this blue-green spaceship that we are inhabiting. I told my wife that I was coming to Washington to speak to a few thousand Catholics, and she said, well, what if they find out that you're a Methodist? And I said, how would they find out? I don't know. I said I thought it would be okay, because I think that my work's very rooted in this precise place as this Ignatian family. Listening to these stories of Father Curry and of Bob Holstein has been really moving to me, especially the story about how Bob Holstein spent some months in jail for his work in Georgia. The other thing my wife said to me as I was leaving, she said, you know, of the last 10 times you've gone to Washington, D.C., you've ended up in jail 5 of them. She said, please don't this time. And I said, I will do my best. I'm glad that you guys are going to Congress and not to jail on Monday. And I don't think it's your job quite yet, perhaps, to go to jail, but I do want to talk about the power and the cost of this kind of work that we do together for a better future. And I'm going to tell you a story that I hope will be of some help as you grow up into this work. It's a story that'll eventually get to a big mistake that I made in my life, but it'll take a minute to get there. My work on climate change began when I was in my 20s, and I wrote the first book about what we then called the greenhouse effect. It came out in 1989, so the same year as those murders, and it was translated into 24 languages and a bestseller all over the place. And that book is not the mistake. That book sadly was right. It turned out that what we understood way back then, what the scientists told us was going to happen, is precisely what has happened. It turns out there was really no great mystery about climate change, about global warming. We knew back then that when you burned coal and gas and oil, you put carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We knew that that CO2 trapped heat that would otherwise radiate back out to space. We knew the planet was going to warm up, and indeed that is what is now happening. Indeed, it's the biggest thing by far that humans have ever done. So far, we've raised the temperature of the Earth about 1 degree Celsius, about 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit. And it started to have all the effects that we knew it would have 30 years ago. Already we see huge changes in creation. Up in the Arctic, about half the summer sea ice in the Arctic's already melted. Those pictures that came back from outer space in the 1960s, those first pictures of the Earth floating in the sort of blue-white marble floating in the black void of space, those beautiful pictures are as out of date as my high school yearbook picture, because there's some, well, come to think of it, actually, it's almost exactly the opposite. There's a lot less white up top now on the planet. The seas have begun to rise, and we've begun even to discombobulate the planet's hydrological cycle, the way that water moves about the Earth. That's what we're seeing. If you wanted one fact to kind of understand your century, you could do worse than warm air holds more water vapor than cold. That's simple physics, and that's why in arid areas, California, say, we see big increases in evaporation, and then drought, and then forest fire. Right now, this week in the Pacific Northwest, people are being told they should stay indoors because there's too much wildfire smoke in their cities. And once that water has gone up into the atmosphere, it's going to come down. And it comes down hard in deluges like we've never seen before. Right now, in Pakistan, people are enduring the greatest flood since Noah. There are 33 million people out of their homes. That's like all the population from Boston down to Baltimore displaced from their homes. It's big, and it's bad, and it's incredibly unfair. Nobody in Pakistan did much of anything to cause the crisis that we're in. There's a couple 100 million people there, but they've contributed less than 1% of the carbon that's up in the air heating the planet. The 300 million of us who live in the United States, about 4% of the world's population, have put about 25% of all that CO2 up in the air. That makes the math easy. If 1,000 people die in the floods in Pakistan, something like 250 of them are on us. And that's what happens now around the world, day after day, week after week. Since we're talking about Central America some and remembering the traumas of El Salvador and the rest of that region, remember that 2 years ago we had the biggest hurricane season in the history of the Atlantic. 30 storms. We ran out of letters in the alphabet. We got into the Greek alphabet. The last two big storms of the year, Eta and Iota, crashed into Central America. And they did extraordinary damage. The damage in Honduras was equivalent to 40% of the GDP of that country. The biggest storm we ever had, Katrina, did damage of about 1% of our GDP. So there's lots and lots and lots of people in Honduras now. A lot of people died in the storm, but a lot who can't farm anymore because their farm is covered with sand or silt, or because the bridge where they took their produce to market is washed out and it won't get rebuilt anytime soon. And so a lot of those people are headed towards our southern border. And when they get there, I can't tell you what their legal status will be, but I can tell you what their moral status is. They did not cause the problem that they're now suffering from. They release about a 15th as much carbon as an American in the course of a year. There are tens of millions of people facing starvation right now in the Horn of Africa because they're on their 5th straight rainy season without rain. In Somalia, the average person produces about 1/500th as much CO2 as the average American. So sadly, our forecast for what was going to happen and how bad it was going to be turned out just to be right. And we're still in the early stages of this. Unless we get our act together very quickly, that 1 degree is going to become 3 degrees Celsius, 5 or 6 degrees Fahrenheit in the course of your lifetime. And if we let that happen, then we will not have civilizations like the ones we're used to. We'll talk about how we're going to get past that, but first we're going to talk about this mistake of mine. Because when I was in my 20s, I didn't have a very good sense of how power in this world worked. I thought that if I wrote books and other people wrote books and scientists did their work and things, if we explained this, if we won this argument, then of course our leaders would do what they needed to do to make change. And so for 10 years I just kept writing books and organizing symposiums and things, until it became pretty clear to me, much too late, that we had won the argument. We were just losing the fight, because the fight wasn't about data and reason and evidence. The fight was what fights are always about: money and power. And the other side in this fight, the fossil fuel industry, had enough money and hence enough political power that they could lose the argument and still win the fight. And that realization, which I hope you guys reach sooner than I did, about how power works and what you need to do to stand up to it, that spurred me to become not so much a writer anymore, but more and more and more an activist. I started with 7 college students up at Middlebury College in Vermont, where I teach, the first global movement around climate change. We called it 350.org. It takes its name from what scientists say is the most carbon you could safely have in the atmosphere, 350 parts per million, a number we're already well north of, about 420 parts per million now. That's why California catches on fire. That's why the Arctic melts. That's why Pakistan drowns. People said, why you choose that weird name? And we said, because it's an important number, but because we want to organize around the world. And we figured that it'll be easier to use Arabic numerals, not English words, to get the rest of the world engaged. We had no idea what we were doing, and no one had sort of tried to do it before, so we just set to work. There were 7 students, there are 7 continents, each one took one. The guy who took the Antarctic also had to take the internet. And out we went to do our work, and the next year we organized our first big global day of action. This would have been about 2009, and it was a remarkable day. We had 5,100 demonstrations happening simultaneously in 181 countries. CNN called it the most widespread day of political activity in the planet's history, not because we'd done such a great job of organizing, but because all over the world there were people who understood what the threat was and wanted to start doing something about it. people who were working in public health or in war and trying to prevent war, or people working on women's rights or development, people who understood that none of those things would be possible on a planet that was quickly overheating. It was remarkable in part because I'd always been told that environmentalism was something that rich white people did, and that if you didn't know where your next meal was coming from, you wouldn't be an environmentalist, and on and on and on. But I remember sitting there that day. This was kind of before Facebook and Twitter, if it's possible to imagine the world before that, long before Insta and all of those things. And but we had our killer app was something called Flickr, this photo sharing website. So we had people all over the place uploading pictures of these demonstrations as they were happening. And my job that day was to be watching these pictures flow in and sort of sending them out to journalists and things. They were coming in 20 and 30 a minute sometimes, and it took about 10 minutes of watching them to realize that that thing about rich white people was just nonsense. Almost everybody we were working with around the world was poor or black or brown or Asian or young, because that's what almost everybody in the world is, you know. And what do you know, they were exactly as interested in the future. So once we'd sort of gotten this started, once there was a kind of movement growing, we began to assemble some of the power that we needed to take on Exxon and Chevron and Shell and BP and the other people who were dominating our politics. We didn't have the money that they did, but we had people, bodies, creativity, spirit, and so we started to work. We did big campaigns like trying to block this thing called the Keystone Pipeline, which became a kind of signal environmental battle for a decade and the first loss for big oil in their efforts to keep building stuff. And then we launched this divestment campaign to try and get institutions around the world to sell their stock in coal and oil and gas companies. And that's been remarkably successful. We're at $40 trillion now in institutions that have joined in. It's the biggest anti-corporate campaign in history. And of course, most of the work has been done by young people at colleges and universities around the world. One after another, they've forced those institutions to divest. Harvard and Oxford and Cambridge and the University of California and the University of Michigan and Princeton last week, and all kinds of Catholic institutions around the world, especially Jesuit institutions, one after another, including Georgetown here close to home. Not quite everybody, Boston College, you have a little bit of work still to do in this regard, but we will keep at it. And what do you know? All this has begun to work because the fossil fuel industry doesn't really have a leg to stand on. It's not just that people have been pointing out that they're destroying the world, it's that people have been pointing out that there's a way better way to deliver the product that they've been delivering. You know, in the last 10 years, engineers have dropped the price of renewable energy about 90%. The cheapest way to generate power on this planet now is to point a sheet of glass at the sun. That is Hogwarts scale magic. That is water into wine, you know. We're at the moment when human beings could, within the next decade, if we really wanted to, end our 700,000-year practice of setting things on fire. Fire has been good to people. Darwin said that fire and language were the two things that really marked human beings. Fire let us cook food at the beginning. It let us move north and south away from the equator. The anthropologists say that gathering around the campfire at night was one of the things that established the deep social bonds that mark human beings. And then came the Industrial Revolution, and learning how to set coal and gas and oil on fire produced the modern world that we know. But it comes at this enormous cost around climate change, but also an enormous cost in terms of human health. When you burn things, you put particulates in the air and people breathe them in. 9 million humans a year die from breathing the combustion byproducts of fossil fuel. That's 1 death in 5. And it's entirely unnecessary because the vaccine for those deaths is electric cars and air source heat pumps. It's solar panels and wind turbines and batteries. And not only is it bad for the climate, and not only is it bad for your lungs, it's bad in other ways too. When you rely on a fuel source that's only available in a few places, the people who live on top of those places get way too much power, and they abuse it time and again. That's the story of the king of Saudi Arabia. That's the story of Vladimir Putin, who took his export winnings, 60% of his export earnings come from just selling oil and gas. Look around your house and see if you can find anything made in Russia to boycott. You probably can't because they've just become a big gas station for the world. He's taken that money and used it to invade Ukraine in the most brutal way imaginable. My wonderful colleague, Svetlana Romanko, who spent the last few years as part of the global Catholic climate movement, its Ukraine leader, has this year been taking a sabbatical to work full-time on trying to deal with the invasion of her country. We've done Zoom after Zoom and webinar after webinar, and always in the background you can hear air raid sirens going off and sometimes bombs falling. And she keeps saying, remind people that fossil fuel destroys the climate and that fossil fuel produces fascism. Think about the world that we could live in if it ran on sun and wind. It's not a perfect world because you still have to mine some stuff to produce all that, but you have to mine a lot less because, well, you need lithium for a battery or a solar panel and you've got to mine it, and we should do it well and humanely. But once you mine it, you put it in the solar panel and you leave it there for a quarter century, and it keeps producing power every time the sun rises above the horizon. If you mine coal to produce power, you set it on fire and then you have to go mine some more the next day. 40% of all the ships in the ocean are just carrying coal and gas and oil back and forth. You guys have the possibility to build an extraordinary new world. But you have to do it, we have to do it fast. This is a timed test. It's not like the other political issues that you deal with. If you're talking to a congressman on Monday about climate change, remind them that it's not like everything else that they work on. Politics moves slowly, and they're sort of used to that. As long as I've been alive, we've been deciding whether or not we should have health care for all Americans. And I think it's a sin that we haven't yet done it. And every year people die and go bankrupt. Every year people die and go bankrupt because we haven't done it yet. But when we finally get around to it, it will not be harder because we delayed. Climate change isn't like that. Once we've melted the Arctic, nobody has a plan for how you freeze it back together again. So we need action and fast. Finally, the U.S. Congress has begun to act a little bit. They finally passed a bill this summer, 34 years after the first scientists testified before Congress about this crisis. And it provides some money that we need to start building EV chargers and so on and so forth. But keep reminding them that that's only the beginning. That's only a down payment. And then realize that we can't rest just in taking on political power. We also have to take on financial power. That's why we started that divestment campaign. But now we're also working hard about the banks and other big financial institutions that provide the money that keep the fossil fuel industry going. The world scientists have said we cannot keep building new fossil fuel infrastructure. No new pipelines, no more frack wells and things, but the banks keep giving them money, and most of that money comes from the US. The four biggest American banks, Chase, Citi, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America, are also the four biggest lenders to the fossil fuel industry. They've given them $1 trillion since we signed those Paris Climate Accords. They didn't need Donald Trump to sabotage that thing. They were happy to do it themselves to try and make a little money. So we're trying to stand up to them. We've got people, we're organizing people to do things like cut up their credit cards from those places. We're going to have a big day in the spring when people all over the country are cutting up their credit cards from those banks, and some of them will be underwater on our dying coral reefs, and some of them will be up in those fire-scarred forests, and some of them will be sitting in banks and ending up in jail, and so on and so forth, because we have to send that kind of strong message. Now, let me say just a couple of things about the question of who should be doing this work. Because young people have been doing this work in really remarkable ways. I know, because as I said, I started 350.org with college students, and when we started that divestment campaign, it was young people who took it up everywhere. And when those young people graduated, they went on to form this thing called the Sunrise Movement that brought us the Green New Deal. That's the reason we finally got this bill in Congress, you know. And then there are people far younger than that who have taken up the fight, and in beautiful ways. You all know the name Greta Thunberg, and you should. She's one of my favorite people to work with on the planet. I adore her. She is as great up close and in person as she is from a distance. Tough and smart. She would be the first person to say, however, that there are 10,000 Greta Thunbergs spread around the planet. There really are. And they have 10 million followers. That's how many, 10 million is how many young people around the world were out on climate strike in September of 2019 before the pandemic kicked in. I seem to take a week now every September to write college recommendations for people who I just think of as close colleagues in this work. It just happens that they're 17 and it's time for them to go to college now, you know. So young people have done their job. I get a little worried, however, because sometimes I hear people my age, and I'm in my 60s now, say, well, it's up to the next generation to solve this problem, which seems ignoble, and it also seems impractical. Because however intelligent and however idealistic and however energetic you are, you lack the structural power to do this by yourselves, okay? You need older people too. So in the last year, we've been organizing this thing called Third Act for people over 60. And I want you to tell your grandparents about it and get them engaged. Because you know what old people do? Old people vote in huge numbers. There is no known way to stop old people from voting, okay? And so we need to get them on side and working. And you know what else? Old people ended up with most of the money. Baby boomers have, in the silent generation ahead of them, have 70% of the country's financial assets. So if you want to take on Congress or you want to take on Wall Street, it's a good thing to have some older people backing you up. And that's how we've been describing our work, to be behind and following and backing up young people as they push. I just came from a big demonstration outside a bunch of banks in Brooklyn, and it was a lot of fun. There were a bunch of high school kids there, a couple of hundred, and of course they were out in the front of the march because they're somewhat sprier, you know. But at the end, there was a big crowd of people with hairlines like mine, and we had a big banner that said "Fossils against fossil fuels." That's the kind of intergenerational solidarity that is required. And to return to this question, where I began about going to jail, let me tell you something that you might pass on to your teachers and your pastors and your grandparents. I organized the first big demonstration here in Washington against this Keystone Pipeline that turned into the biggest civil disobedience action about anything in this country in a very long time. 1,200 and some people went to jail. And that was enough to really get things going. But when I wrote the letter asking people to come to Washington to get arrested, I said quite specifically, I do not think that young people should have to be the cannon fodder in this case. They're doing the work, but if you're 19, it's possible an arrest record is not the very best thing for your resume. One of the few unmixed blessings of growing older is, past a certain point, what the hell are they going to do to you, you know? And so it was with pleasure that I saw a lot of people who looked like me arriving for this. We did not ask people as they were getting arrested, how old are you? That would have been rude, but we did cleverly, I think, say, who was president when you were born? And the two biggest cohorts came from the Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Harry Truman presidencies. On the last day, there was a guy arrested with a sign around his neck that said, World War II vet, handle with care. He was so old that he'd been born in the Warren Harding administration, which I'd almost forgotten there was a Warren Harding administration. It was very good for the young people who were there to see their elders acting the way that we need elders acting in a working society. So, what I want to say to you as my time runs out here is extraordinary thanks for the work that you've already begun on, and at an early age. It's really important that you do it. It's really important that you don't be fooled the way I was, and that you understand where power lies and that you have to take it on. And it's really important that you remind people older than you that they have a real responsibility here too. You're the ones who are going to have to live in this world that we're creating, but none of us want to leave behind a legacy of the kind we're now threatening to do. This is the most important thing that's ever happened on this planet, and we do not know how the story is going to come out. We do not know who's going to win this fight. The only thing I will tell you is that as you engage in it, you have brothers and sisters in every corner of the earth, and they are grateful for the work that you are doing as you are grateful for theirs. That kind of solidarity goes an awful long ways. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Bill, for that amazing speech. And now we would like to bring out the Peace Poets to perform a song.
When I say people, y'all say power, people.
Power.
People.
Power. When I say we want, y'all say justice. We want.
Justice.
We want.
Justice.
When
I say we are, you say beautiful. We are.
Beautiful.
We are.
Beautiful. When I say we are, y'all say rising. We are.
Rising.
We are.
Rising. I say peace to the poets who propagate peace. who have to protect life, because war is a beast and the war in the streets have got the poor on the leash. Right now there are people dying to eat. But like Zapata, we don't live on our knees, we die on our feet, we riot the streets, we don't sit down and complain. We are people of action. What we do is fighting for change. We represent peace because it's so critical. We represent peace because the soul's spiritual. I say peace to the Be the Change movement. Movers in the front and the people who ain't moved yet. Don't forget, change is pursuing. Don't forget, chains take time to loosen. Don't forget, Malcolm X was a truant. I say peace because I've lost so many to violence. And I speak peace because I've lost many more to silence.
So I say peace to the poets who propagate peace. From the west side, baby, down south to the east. Rocking hard for your pops, mom's nephew and niece. Doing this out of love, because war is a beast. I say peace to the poets behind their bars like a convict. People thinking peace is the absence of conflict. It's really the ability to cope with it, to deal with it, to cry with it, to hope with it. We spit for all ages, grad school to third graders, in a mosque, in a church, from baptisms to satyrs. We spit to uplift this gift that God gave us, the power of the word, because we heard it might save us.
So we say, peace to the poets who propagate peace, and power to the people who march in these streets, and word to the workers who walk in bare feet, and light to the writers who fight to get free. I see me in you, and you in me, in the streets of Cochabamba, taking back El Agua, rocking Sandinista parties when we took Managua, shook my fist in Nueva York, yelling no a la guerra, environmentalist to protect la tierra. I'm a feminist, yo respeto mi madre. Soy padre y bebé, the struggle of every day. Abuelita y hijita, soy la gente que grita. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. I'm the people united and I will never be divided. I'm the people who riot and I will never be quiet. I'm the ones who rebel for those stuck in a cell. I'm the people who see we are not yet free. Cause I am the people and the people are me. Peace.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to being with y'all this weekend. Love and gratitude to those who helped you get here, to those who organized this, to those who cleaned this space, for everybody and the good work that's happening right now. It's an honor to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you once again to Bill and to the Peace Poets. I'm very excited to announce that we get to hear a word from one of our sponsors, the Boston College School of Theology and Ministry.
so we encourage that you stay so you know what's happening next. Again, we want to thank our generous sponsors. So after these announcements, we will have a break for dinner until 7:55, at which point you should head to the breakout session number 1. This evening's prayer service for the martyrs will take place here in the ballroom at 9:10 p.m. If you created a white cross at an IFTJ orientation session this afternoon or before your arrival in DC, please bring it to the prayer for the Jesuit martyrs. In addition to that, with liturgy sign-ups, if you'd like to participate in the choir or band during Sunday's liturgy, please sign up at the front of the stage directly following these announcements.
All Jesuits, vowed religious, and anyone who would like to participate in the prayer for the Jesuit martyrs are asked to meet at the back of the ballroom directly after these announcements to sign up. Jesuits who are here, could you please stand for a moment so we can see all of our brother Jesuits who are joining us this weekend. Thank you to all those Jesuits joining us here and helping lead our communities. At the end of this session, all board members and other people asked to participate in the prayer for the Jesuit martyrs should also meet at the sound table at the back of the ballroom.
Make sure to check out our exhibitor space in the International Terrace and Columbia, right up the stairs at the back of the ballroom. Throughout the weekend, you will have a chance to meet fantastic organizations, participate in a collaborative art project, and take selfies with Pope Francis.
And lastly, please also join us in the concourse foyer just outside the ballroom to our right for a book signing with tonight's keynote speaker, Bill McKibben, from 6 to 6:30. We hope you have a great dinner, and we look forward to seeing you back here later this evening.